The Titan Missile Museum, also known as Air Force Facility Missile Site 8, or as Titan II ICBM Site 5717, is a former ICBM, which stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, site located about 40 kilometers or 25 miles south of Tucson, Arizona, here in the U.S. It was constructed in 1963 and deactivated in 1984. The museum is run by the nonprofit Arizona Aerospace Foundation and includes the inert Titan II missile in the silo as well as the original launch facility. So due to our newfound friendship ally, Russia, I thought it appropriate to visit the Titan Missile Museum here in Green Valley, Arizona. That's a big ass antenna behind me. I'll show you what that is in a minute. So I've got about a 45-minute tour booked. We'll check out what's going on inside the Titan Missile Center. Of course, there's the obligatory entrance and exit through the gift shop. In addition to the gift shop, the lobby contains detailed information on the missile, the history of the missile, the history of the Cold War, and displays some of the potential damage that we could do to fellow humans, which we seem to spend a lot of time figuring out ways to do these days. Understanding this is a fairly long video, which is not typical, I figured the people that are actually interested in this are going to watch the whole thing and be interested, and the others will do the usual 2 or 3 minutes and stop. So enjoy, for those of you that want to see it.
Before we get started going underground, I do have a quick 5-minute briefing video to play for you. We'll give you some background on the Titan II missile program itself and its integral part in Cold War nuclear strategy. Now after that video, we'll make our way outside to the top of the access portal, down those 55 stairs. We'll hang out at this bottom area for just a couple of minutes before heading all the way into the Launch Control Center. When we get into the Control Center, I will be asking for 2 volunteers. One of the things that we'll do today is simulate a Titan II missile launch. We do need 2 commanders to turn those keys, so keep that in mind as we're headed there. After our time in the command center, we'll make our way to the other end of the silo and take a look at the Titan II missile itself. I've already seen this briefing video too many times. So I'll get started. We'll lower the lights about halfway. I'll step out and be back to collect you in 5 minutes. On their shift for 24 hours, also known as an alert. Their day didn't start before that, though, with a briefing at the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base all the way up in Tucson. From that briefing, they made a 30-mile journey. Back then, that was down mostly dirt roads. And they take those roads all the way up to our front gate right there behind us. To gain access to the facility, the senior member of the crew had to make 4 individual phone calls. The first of those was outside that gate. On the other side is a small blue box that used to hold fuel. They'd use that phone to call the crew already in the silo and let them know they're leaving when it arrived. As soon as they hung up that call, it started a 3-minute timer. They had exactly 3 minutes to make their way through that gate, clear their service weapons, the red barrel on this side of it, and then all the way across the complex and down that first set of stairs to the second phone. That was part of the security procedures here because there was not active top-secret security personnel at each site, but they were patrolling in the area no more than 20 minutes away. So if that incoming crew thought that they had been followed, infiltrated, or compromised, instead of sending out a signal, all they had to do was delay and miss that second phone call. At that point, the crew inside would notify security and they would arrive within 20 minutes to assess the situation. This time we'll assume that the crew did make it in 3 minutes. At that point, the senior member only opens up the door to the silo and steps inside. They find themselves in a caged-in area called the entrapment area. And in the entrapment area, there is a third phone, a red coffee can hanging from the wall, and the only live video camera on site at the time. The crew in the command center would watch that live feed and watch who was making the third phone, ensuring that no one was being coerced into the silo. At that morning briefing, that member of the crew received a piece of paper with a 6-digit one-time use access code on it. They'd read that code off into the third phone, and if that matched the code the crew inside had, they'd be granted access. But that was classified, one-time use, so they had to get rid of it as soon as they used it. Since this program started in the 60s, they used the futuristic method, taking that piece of paper and lighting it on fire, letting it burn out for a few seconds before placing it in the red coffee can to burn the rest of the way out. The fourth phone call is at the bottom of the access portal. We'll talk about that one when we get down there. Going into the silo, I'll actually be at the back of the group, but I do need a volunteer to lead us down. Down here at that phone on our left. And the purpose of that call was to coordinate unlocking this first glass door. The only way to do it was to have somebody on the outside press the open button at that control panel right there. And someone in the launch control center press the open button there at the exact same time. When that did happen, these 4 steel interlocked hydraulic pins would retract from the doors themselves and they'd be unlocked. But they don't move on their own. That was the responsibility of that incoming crew to pull them open and then pull them closed behind them. You only have one open at a time. The doors themselves are steel I-beams that were welded together and filled with concrete. Anybody want to guess how much those weigh?
A lot.
They do weigh a lot. That's exactly how much they weigh.
15 pounds.
Let's wait. We are the ton tricks though, so since you got the answer right with a lot, I'm not this right now. See that arrow right there?
Yeah.
Give it a pull and see if you can move.
This one. Watch this every day.
Oh my God.
Now, would you believe that you just moved 6,000 pounds? That's a nice move.
Wow.
These doors are 3 tons each. And when these doors were closed, the valve and the gaskets up top, everything on the inside was airtight. The doors themselves would protect against any physical assault or airborne contaminants, including radioactive fallout. And this area of the silo here is the soft area. After we pass through the short tunnel behind us, we'll be in the hardened area of the silo. In the event of a near-miss nuclear strike or catastrophic natural disaster, the soft area was not expected to survive that. The hardened area would be more likely to. The difference are the walls themselves. Depending on where you are in the hardened area, the walls are 4 to 8 foot thick. They're made of poured concrete that was poured in a continuous pour, so there are no seams, and it's also reinforced with rebar. But not the pinky size stuff you may have seen before. It's number 18, and that's almost as big around as my forearm is. We do have a small section of that upstairs in the museum, so if you do want to pick up that steel out of the floor and see how heavy it is, it's at that front counter. And on that little display, there are 3 pieces of rebar. The one on each end are glued down, so they're for one. We're going to head straight back and take a left all the way to the launch control center. As we're walking in that room, there are 2 cabinets about waist height on our right-hand side. Let's make sure that everybody gets in that room past the end of those cabinets. And the last thing before we move, see that yellow ring on the side of the hallway. As we pass by that, if you're taller than that, what's one of the cableways, make sure to watch the top of your head. If you do want to try that door on the way by, you can. Just if you pull all the way out, make sure to push it back into the next person. That's another way to burn the red works.
Control room.
There's some big springs. Just put big springs in.
We need those 2 volunteers to act as our commanders. Our command?
Yeah.
Right in front.
Yeah.
One more volunteer. Go ahead and take her off the chair on the other side. Round of applause. Thank you for volunteering.
Good luck, everybody.
So welcome to the Launch Control Center. If you remember from that diagram at the very beginning of the tour, the sides of this building are completely round. As we walk inside this room, we stepped over about a 12-inch gap between the walls and the floors themselves. There are 3 levels to this building, and all 3 are suspended. First, from the center pole in the middle, and from 8 giant shock absorbing screens around the perimeter. And later on, when we go see the missile, as we're walking down that hallway, there are going to be those cylinders on each side of the hallway. Each one of those cylinders is another shock absorbing spring. So in the event of a near-miss nuclear strike or catastrophic natural disaster, everything up top would likely be gone, but everything down here would still be here to fire a retaliatory missile. This room is the nerve center of the silo. Everything underground and topside could be controlled from right here. The floor above us is the crew quarters. There's a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen and dining area, and a very small recreation area. It's a desk about that wide with 2 chairs. The floor below us is our maintenance floor. That's where the bulkheads for all the air, electrical, and plumbing systems are housed. So who are our crew of 4? We have 2 officers, 2 enlisted personnel. Our first officer was our missile combat crew commander, responsible for the complex itself, everyone inside, and the mission. You accept those responsibilities?
I do.
The best part about being our commander, as the person in charge, they do get to delegate, hand out orders. Most of the time, that was to their deputy missile contact group commander. Our deputy was our communications and safety officer. All of this equipment here behind our deputy are radio relays for contact with the outside world. Our 2 enlistees were our BMAT, our ballistic missile analyst technician, responsible for the missile itself and its guidance system, and our MFT, our missile facility technician, responsible for all the air, electrical, and plumbing system that kept the complex up and running. And the first task that our crew had to complete once on their alert was a top to bottom check of every component in the silo. Look at that giant book right there, that is a list of all of those components. And it usually took around 4 hours. Halfway through their shift, the 12-hour mark, they do it again. Another top to bottom check, another 4 hours of preventative maintenance. Each of our crew members did get a 4-hour rest period, and that was in pairs. So there'd be 1 officer, 1 enlistee. They'd go up to the crew quarters, they could make a meal, get some sleep if they could. And that was the only place on site that they were allowed to be alone. Everywhere else was a strict 2 personnel policy at all times. And that is not much time out of that 24 hours. The rest of the time, there were messages to answer, a couple of minor checklists to go through. For the most part, it was long periods of quiet waiting for incoming messages that would sound like this. Affirmative. Now, while that message we just heard was 17 characters, the one our crews would have received was 41. That was the primary messaging and communications for the silo, so that could have been something mundane. But there was always the possibility that those would be the orders to launch. And all 54 Titan IIs were strictly retaliatory missiles only. The only event in which they would have been launched was if the then Soviet Union launched upon the United States first. If that had happened, ICBMs of that time period and today have an average flight time of 25 to 40 minutes. So NORAD, the early warning detection system for North America, would have detected the incoming missiles and then contacted the only person in the country with the authority to authorize a nuclear strike. Anybody know who that is?
Henry Fonda.
I have no idea who that
Oh my gosh, you just aged.
That's sad, because all of us do.
is. Only couple that is there. But it is the president as part of their responsibilities as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And they would get 10 minutes exactly to make a retaliatory decision. And once that decision was made, they would call the Pentagon. The Pentagon would make contact with Strategic Air Command at the Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska. And they were prepared launch orders for all 54 of these Titan IIs. These were just one part of the nuclear triad. There would also be launch orders for the nuclear submarine fleet and the B-52 nuclear bombing fleet. So Once our message comes over the radio, our two officers grab their decoding binders. They open them up to the very first page and copy down that message exactly how they heard it. Our next step was to verify they heard the same message. They then closed their binders and trade. And then after opening up, they would confirm they heard the same message, and commanders would have the same message.
It is the same message.
Now, once decoded, if those were the orders to launch, they would make their way to the emergency war order safe. That right one back there. There is a center tumbler on there, but there's also two padlocks. Those padlocks were the personal property of our commander and our deputy. When they were assigned this alert, they were given those padlocks. They were the only people on the planet that knew the combinations and only to their padlock. And they were required to keep those locks on their person at all times, with the one exception of being on alert. As our incoming commanders came in, they put their locks on that safe, while our leaving commanders would take their locks off and take those with them. But inside there were a number of things. 24 pre-written orders envelopes, also known as cookies, and 2 keys. There are a lot of movies where nuclear devices are triggered by buttons. There is actually one place on Earth that does exist, but it's Hollywood because they made that up. Fixed keys. They take the keys out of the safe. There's one here on the commander's console, one over here on the side of the deputy's console. And then they'd find the appropriate cookie, the one with the 2 characters in the corner, matching the first 2 characters of that incoming message. Today we'll say that's Delta Foxtrot. You open up that cookie and inside is another message for our commanders. Then when you're done with that, go ahead and share it with the deputy. The deputy, would you please read us off the very first line at the top?
Echo, Henry 7, Mike, William, X-ray.
It's more code for our commanders to decode. Now on that message, there is an authorization code and 2 other vital pieces of information for firing this device. The first is time of launch. Our deputy would decode that right across this clock face. And that does look different from your standard analog clock. That was set up in Zulu time, also known as Greenwich Mean Time. Greenwich is the point of the Earth in which all days are calculated from, so Zulu time ignores any delay. Deputy, what time is it in Australia right now?
Not sure.
Okay, because all you would have to do would be to look at your Zulu clock. Because no matter where you are, Zulu stays the same. Now, our other piece of information was our butterfly valve unlock code. Our BMAT would have put that code on this tumbler lock right there. Then press the light test button. Operate would light up green. And when you press operate, the system was enabled. Now, the butterfly valves are part of what made the Titan II such a good deterrent. Overall, it was storable fuel. Previous ICBM projects like the Titan Is and the Atlas Is, they had to be fueled with their oxidizer before launch. In perfect conditions, that would take around 10 minutes. On average, that can take half an hour or more. The fuel for the Titan II is stored on board, and it is a 2-part liquid propellant, a hypergallic mixture of nitrogen tetroxide and hydrazine. When the hypergallics when those 2 liquids meet, they spontaneously combust. Right above the engines, and separating those fuel cells, are 4 butterfly valves. Only one has a lock on the outside, but if that lock does not disengage, the system will not launch. If that code is correct when you turn the keys, that lock will disengage, allowing when it's time for our valves to open up. The 2 parts of the fuel to flow through meet at the engines and ignite the rocket. That cut down response time from 10 minutes plus to 3 minutes. 2 of those are decoding this information in 58 seconds as we turn the key to lift off. Now here in a minute, we will turn those keys and run the simulator. While that's happening, we'll have a line of lights that come up across this top bar. I'll explain what those mean first, and then we'll turn the keys. Our first is launch enabled. That means the butterfly valve code was the correct code. The lock is disengaged, and the system is launching. Followed by batteries activated. On board the Titan II, there are 2 28-volt dry DC batteries. Each one has an electrolyte bladder suspended above it. When you turn the keys, a pyrotechnic knife punctures those bladders. The electrolytes drain down into the dry batteries, and they charge for the first and last time. APS power is the missile itself, disconnecting from silo power, and starting to run on its own internal power. Silo soft is when the 760-ton silo door has taken its 20 seconds to open up all the way. Guidance go is the missile itself downloading its guidance information. Fire engines is ignition, and then liftoff. Now all we would have to do would be to wait for that time of launch. And while we do wait for our time of launch, did anybody notice the information that we are missing?
Forgot to save yet.
Target. Commander, on your console up top here, we have 3 target indicators, 1, 2, and 3, which is currently illuminated. Target 2. As far as we know, this complex was always aimed at target 2. Those other options could have been changed between, but only after receiving an order to do so. Where is target 2, Commander?
I don't think any of us know.
That's okay, because I don't know either. And our crews did not know. That was classified then, and is still classified today. There are a multitude of reasons for that. I'll give you a couple. One is security. The less people who know what those targets are, the better. And to ensure that our crew deterrence, as well as the missile. Commander, if you knew the target, maybe you really appreciated the architecture of that place. You liked a piece of music that had been written there, or you once met someone from there. When you got your orders to launch, would any of that make you hesitate?
Nope. I feel really bad about it.
Then you are a deterrent.
Right?
Oh, look at that. It is our time of launch. Commander, Deputy, please stand up. Go ahead and place a hand on your key. Don't turn them just yet, though. Just keep clear. Yes. All right, Commander, when I say go, you will give us a short countdown. 3, 2, 1, mark.
Am I turning clockwise or counterclockwise?
Clockwise. One mark, and you can do it at the same time. We're going to hold it there for 5 seconds or until launch enable lights up. With launch enabled up, go ahead and go the keys. When Commander, as these light up, read them out for us. Okay. Now, before we turn these, what you do, there is not a way to stop this launch sequence. There is no abort. There is no redirect. Ready, Commander?
Ready.
Give us our countdown.
Okay, countdown to launch in 3, 2, 1, turn. Launch enabled.
Go the keys.
Batteries activated.
Go the keys. When that battery is activated, it's the longest part of the launch sequence. Of the 58 seconds from turn of the key to lift off, 28 of those are those batteries charging up. To launch.
We have APS power.
Missile is disconnected from silo power.
Silo soft.
Silo door is open.
Guidance go. Fire engine. And we have liftoff.
Once the missile reaches 77% thrust capacity, it leaves the silo. It has a max range of 6,300 miles. It travel speeds over Mach 20, and it does go all the way past the stratosphere, separating in 2 stages before just the reentry vehicle re-enters Earth's atmosphere. It carries a payload of a W-53, 9-megaton thermonuclear warhead, with an average area of destruction of 900 square miles. For over 20 years, the Titan IIs and their crews stood on alert, did their jobs, in case your deterrence worked. Alright. You have about 5 minutes so left in this room for questions and poking around a little bit. We'll start with questions first now.
Did the Soviets have a similar?
They did. Now, on the Soviet side, it was not as advanced of a system as this, because a lot of this stuff was invented before this program. But they did have an equivalent, and there were 90 silos that they had.
What did they do after the launch? So
Well,
now they're done.
So there were 2 options after launch. Because if these launched, that did mean total global nuclear war. So their first instruction was to stay, wait for further instructions. Now there is a calculated breathable 20 days of air in here for 4 people at a resting heartbeat. In that situation, those people would likely not be at a resting heartbeat. So it's closer to 15. There is a 30-day supply of emergency rations on the floor below us. And when you came to the end of that 15 days, you had a choice. You either stay and permanently await further orders, or you could try to crawl out the air shaft. Over on the wall over there, that big red and silver thing that is an air, is a glass valve for the air intake. On the floor below us, there's an air outtake. That valve can be opened, but it opens up into an air shaft that in the event that these launch would likely not be there. If that was still there, it's about 10 foot horizontal, 35 foot vertical. You could get out. We did have the location of a rendezvous point 25 miles away from here. And It was at the top of one of those mountains up in San Ritas. As much of those emergency rations that were left, they could carry between the four of them, and a pair of sidearms with 6 rounds each between the four of them.
How often would they have drills?
So, once a month, your crew did have to go back up to the air base that you were around because there was a similar facility there. You were doing simulations all day. But they did have drills in the silo. Now, how often and how many is not public information. But the information that we do have is that they would do all of this just like this. Keys would be there, and they would put a sit down order before turning the keys. But the butterfly valve code that they got from that particular cookie would not put this in the watchdog. Testament. So they weren't supposed to know it was a drill, but every time they did one of those, they had to change all those cookies out. So that happened, we were grateful, and then somebody comes by to change the cookies at that point. That where the stand down order you got the other day was a drill, and then you know, but they weren't supposed to know while it was happening.
And where did they get the cookies? No, I know,
Oh,
but
they would come from Air Command, and they actually come down from the base.
so they would have visitors.
The only visitors that they would really have is if the crew chief was coming by, because they were supposed to spend a 12-hour shift at each one of their silos that they were crew chief of. If there was a fuel transfer going on, there would be extra engineers here. Those are called the MIMs, and that's the roadrunner symbol that you see up top, is because they ran around to all the silos and helped with all that stuff. Now, a lot of what they did was fuel transfer. Every 18 months, the fuel had to be pulled out, checked for stability, put right back in. But if there was something that the MFT couldn't fix, the BNAP would take over, and if he couldn't fix that, he was the only person on the crew with the authority to call them to come and fix it or bring extra parts.
Was everybody Air Force?
Yes, for this program.
If there was a near strike to here, what's the air situation? How did they keep fresh air here?
So if there was a nearby strike, in that situation, that would be a surprise. That wasn't picked up by
Okay.
NORAD. That slams shut automatically. It does have 2 modes. You can close it manually, or if there's too much of a pressure change, it slams shut so that nothing gets in the air intake.
And then you just have
So
you just have the air that's in here then.
from that point on, yes. Alrighty. Well, I do want to reassure our commander and deputy that we did not fire a missile today. We're going to prove it to him by going and taking a look at it. Commander, deputy, go ahead and lead us all the way down the cableway to the end until we see the missile itself.
It's insanity how many resources go into destroying other people. Insane. We're heading to the missile.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so we are currently on level 2 of the launch, about 45 feet of surface. From the top all the way to the bottom of the launch duct, it's 146 feet deep. The missile itself is 103 feet tall, 10 foot in diameter, and when they were fully fueled and loaded with a warhead, they weighed 330,000 pounds. And they are the largest land-based ICBM the United States has ever put on alert. The one we're looking at here only weighs about 20,000 pounds, and it's not the same missile that was stationed here on alert. The one that was here did hold fuel and a warhead, and that made it unsafe for the museum display. This one was stationed at the Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas, where it was used as the training missile for the entire program during the 10 months of technical training that our missileers would do. Now this is the last of the Titan II silos. The rest started being decommissioned in the early 80s. And under the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, Part 2, basically both the Soviet Union and the United States agreed to get rid of all of their long-range land-based ICBMs of this size yield. But we each keep one of those silos as a museum and national landmark. To make that happen here, there were some extra changes we had to make. One of them, I'll give you the main ones. That missile cannot have any engines on the bottom that are sitting up there on top. That silo door was opened up halfway, wedged in place, and then concreted over, so it'll never move again. There is a bunch of glass up top, and that does provide a really cool top-down view, but that was not put there for us. Under that SALT II agreement, until the late 90s, there was this first a Soviet and then a Russian satellite that would fly over 3 times a day and take a picture down into the silo. And what they were looking for is a square hole that's been cut out of the heat shield of the reentry vehicle. Because if you're looking in there, you can see that there is not a nuclear device here. And if this somehow managed to launch without any engines and with a half-open door, because that reentry vehicle has a hole in it, it would not survive reentry back into the atmosphere. There were 141 of these Titan IIs built, 54 stood on alert in silos just like these, and all these silos were exactly the same. The rest were used for some research development stuff and then test launches, which there were 57 of those. These were designed as a weapon. There's no way around that, but if you take that reentry vehicle off the top, this is a really good launch vehicle. And because they were built and designed by Martin Marietta, that was IP. So other people could commission these, and NASA did. They commissioned 14 of them. 2 of those were used for the Helios 1 and 2 probes, and the rest were used for the manned Gemini missions, which were the precursors to the Apollo missions. That is all the fun facts I have for you today. Well, actually, I have one more. The last launch of a Titan II was October of 2003. Because after they were taken off alert, the Air Force used them to launch communication satellites. That's all the fun facts I have for you today. We'll take a little bit of time to look around and take some pictures. If you got more questions, come see me, and I'll call again in a couple of minutes. And we'll start back upstairs.
Back up. This is the beginning of the self-guided topside tour. On the topside, visitors will see the alarm systems, known as tipsies, that secure the missile silo door, an up-close view of the missile's engine, and tour a variety of vehicles relevant to silo and site, as well as other Air Force operations. The silo doors are open enough to look down into the 146-foot missile silo and see the Titan II missile standing tall as it did, on alert for over 20 years. The self-guided tour tickets for the topside tour are $7 and include an audio guide device which has great detailed information on each vehicle and the entire operation.